We're at Lake Cave and about to start a tour. It's quite an impressive cave, as you can see. So what I'll be doing is looking at the geology, the deep time history of the limestone and then the formation of the cave, and looking something at the ecology as well.
If you look across to the other side of the Doline, you can see the exposed formation. It was growing in here before the ceiling collapsed. That's now considered dead, but just shows how well decorated this chamber would have been prior to the development of the Doline.
What's a Doline?
Doline is a collapsed cave chamber where the roof has fallen in. Sometimes it's just a steep-sided depression. Other times, like here, it is a complete overhang and need either ladders or specialised equipment to access the cave, which is invariably at the bottom of the Doline.
I'll get a photo on the thing here.
Underground this afternoon, if that still sounds like something you would like to do. That's good, because you are halfway down. It would be a shame to turn around and go back up to the top without seeing the main attraction. Just a quick show of hands before we go any further. Who's been to any of our other caves in the area before? No one? You have? Okay, great. We have one cave expert on our hands, so if you have any tricky questions, you can just ask this gentleman over here. I'm sure he'll be able to answer them for you. Right now, you're all sitting in what's known as a doline, or a sinkhole. And a doline is an area which once upon a time used to be a cave. So congratulations everyone, you have made it to the deepest part of Lake Cave. We are currently 62 metres underground. However, we are still 30 metres above sea level, and that's because we're standing inside an ancient sand dune that was cemented together between 1 and 1.5 million years ago. It's a rather large sand dune. In fact, it's about 100 kilometres long and in its widest parts about 4 kilometres wide. It's known as the Leeuwin Naturalist Ridge, and it's home to over 100 caves and an additional 200 karst features, which we commonly call baby caves. So I do apologise, we have been lying to you up until this point. This should in fact be called Stream Cave, because this cavern was sculpted by an underground stream that begins 3 kilometres east of the back wall of the cave there, at a place called Nindup Plains. It takes roughly 5 years for that water to seep through the 3 kilometres of limestone and arrive in Lake Cave at the rear. Slowly moving through the cave right now to exit underneath where you're all standing and to travel another 2.5 kilometres out to Conto Springs and into the ocean. So as is the stream, we're going to start moving through the cave now. We're going to stay on the pathway using the handrails on the left and watching out for our track lights on the right hand side. They can be a bit of a trip hazard, and I don't want any of you going in the drink today. We're also going to need to stay as a group throughout the whole experience, and that's because I'm going to be turning lights on and off as we move through the cave, and I don't want to leave any of you in the dark, so follow me. Can you all see his head, his horns, his body and his wings there? No, he's a friendly dragon. You may have noticed that there's something else quite unusual in this part of the cave that's just illuminated right in front of us over here. What is so strange about this formation here? It is above the water, isn't it? It's not quite floating. Oh, I'll go into the details in a moment. But this is what we call our suspended table. Before I tell you how this was formed, I'm going to take you to Speleothem basics, or Cave Science 101. All of the formations that you're seeing in the cave have begun with a heavy downpour of rain that can penetrate through the leaf litter on the surface, picking up carbon as it does so, which turns the water slightly acidic and allows it to dissolve a little bit of limestone on its journey through the rock. Several months later, that rainwater will finally arrive at the roof of the cave and enter this environment just one drop at a time. As that drop seeps through the ceiling, it degasses, letting go of carbon dioxide and allowing the rainwater to redeposit the dissolved limestone in a thin ring of calcium carbonate or calcite crystal around the drop of water. So drop after drop after drop, we get our most simple form of Speleothem, or cave decoration, and we call them our straws. They look a little bit like dried spaghetti. So we call them straws because they look like straws, but also because they're hollow, that's right. Sometimes our hollow straws might become blocked, or around the outside of the straw there are a lot of other tiny pores in the limestone, which allow water to seep through around the outside of the straw to continue redepositing that calcite crystal as a thicker stalactite. Sometimes our stalactites might drip and those drops of water will make their way to the floor of the cave, or on top of formations like our dragon here, to continue redepositing that crystal as a stalagmite. Sometimes, if we get a very drippy stalactite, we get a very large stalagmite growing below. And sometimes a lot of water is actually seeping through the walls of the cave. And in a very active area of the cave, as the crystal is being redeposited, while the surface of the calcite underneath is still wet, it can look as though it's still moving. We call this flowstone, and there's a great example in Jabba the Hutt over here. So back to our suspended table. This formation would have came about at a time hundreds of thousands of years ago, when the cave was going through a dry spell, allowing these two columns and this cap of flowstone to form on top of what used to be below. Eventually, when the stream returned to the cave, it washed away all of that sand and sediment to leave our calcite suspended table formation above the water for us to admire. Would any of you like to take a guess at how much this formation is estimated to weigh?
No, you don't have to tell us.
Is it hollow or flat?
It's not hollow, no. It's completely
3
dense.
tons.
That's a good guess, you're on the right track. A little bit more than that. It's about 5 tonnes worth of calcite crystal. So as you can see, calcite is very dense, but it's also very good at supporting itself. This formation is just suspended from these 2 points here. If you look behind me, you might notice that this column has actually snapped clean in half. We've nicknamed this our celery stick. And it's snapped in half because the foundation, which it would have formed on top of, has since eroded away. So any sideways movement with our calcite crystal is not that enjoyable for it. It tends to be very fragile when moved out of alignment. So, would you like to follow me? We've got some more exploring to do. So by this point, you're probably all wondering how long it takes for these formations to come about. We do have a little bit of a clue in this area of the cave. Can you all see this straw with the black mark on it? Yep. That black mark was actually left by a tour guide about 60 years ago.
Amazing.
Yes, by a tour guide. He held his candle a little bit too close to the end of the straw. And that 3.5 centimetres growth below is from the last 60 years. Amazing.
So green.
You might also notice that behind me is a pretty average looking stalactite, but on the end of that stalactite it's dripping almost once every second to create quite an extraordinary looking stalagmite below. If you look closely where that drop is landing, it's creating small splashes from a small pool, and those splashes are creating even more pools in the flowstone below. What does this formation look like to you guys?
Coral.
We call it brain coral. There's an even bigger cave pool over to the right hand side, which we've nicknamed our wishing well, but I like to call it the fairy pond.
Can you see it? Can you see it? I can see the water here.
The water in that pond is saturated with dissolved limestone, which allows it to deposit the crystal around the outsides of the walls. We call these cave pearls. So now I'm going to ask you to lead the way again, following the path until you reach the back platform, where I ask you to take a seat on that bench for our light show. I'll be right behind you. So of course, I do have an exception to the rule for you all to pass around. This is a piece of stalactite. If you turn it over, you can actually see the original straw hole underneath. As you can see, calcite is definitely crystal, illuminating with my torchlight. Be very careful not to throw this to your neighbour or drop it on your toes. Calcite is as dense as concrete, so this is a few kilograms. Although it's very dense and heavy, it's also very fragile. When we talk about the hardness of objects, we rate diamonds out of 10. One of the hardest things on earth. Our fingernails come in at a 2.7, and our calcite crystal is not much stronger than our fingernails, rated at about a 3. So I'll start with you, if you'd like to pass around our dragon's head. You might notice that some of the stalactites in this area of the cave are a little bit different in colour to some of the others we've seen so far. They're almost orange or golden. That colour actually comes from rotting organic material above the ground, as well as tree roots in the soil. The rainwater picks up what's called tannins and takes them on a journey through the rock to redeposit them in the crystal in the cave. You may also notice that behind me, the wall of the cave looks a little bit different to the rest of the cave as well. That brown colour is actually fossilised soil, which we call paleosoil, and it's seeped in from above ground when there used to be an additional opening to this cave in this location. That opening would have been caused by a significant rockfall event. We don't know exactly when this occurred, but it was a long time before we discovered the cave in 1897. As well as the beautiful reflections of our suspended table and all of those stalactites, you might notice that something to the left of the cave has illuminated. And there's something quite strange about these stalagmites over here. What is so unusual about these stalagmites?
They're often at an angle.
They are on an angle. They wouldn't have formed on an angle, they would have formed vertically on the limestone that they have formed on. However, water has eroded that foundation and dislodged it. This is an effect we call scalloping, and I think they look a lot like something else you might find under the ocean. More coral. So now I would like to reintroduce you all to our cave dragon. Going to breathe some fire for us this afternoon. So, for my next trick, I would like to show you all the natural lighting inside of Lake Cave. So for this to be effective, I ask that you please turn off all of your cameras and your phone screens just for 30 seconds while I switch off all the lights and we experience cave darkness. The shoals are formed when that water enriched with dissolved limestone reaches the roof of the cave on an angle. So as the drop of water travels down the angled surface, it redeposits the crystal in a thin line. So line after line after line, we get these sheets of crystal. And I think the shoals are my favourite. So the water is 100% dependent on rainfall, and the water that's being inside the cave is an average of the last 5 years' rainfall. So during different times in history, the water level has been at different levels. So obviously when the suspended table formed, there was no water in the cave. But you can see that there's some marks on the table that indicate to us that the water level has been much higher in the past. Those stains are from tannin.
So the water is actually all coming from above, there's no underground water or...
It is an underground stream, but it has a catchment. So all groundwater in the Lewin Naturalist Ridge is seeping through the limestone and is replenished from rainfall. It's much different to, for example, I'm not sure if you're from Western Australia, but the Yarragadee Aquifer, which is between Perth, and it actually is a massive underground water aquifer that's been there for millions and millions of years. Whereas this limestone is only 1 to 1.5 million years old, so the underground streams and water tables are actually quite young. They're not constantly sort of they're not massive bodies of water underground. They're much smaller.
So there'd never be a time that where it would be totally dry.
Yes, absolutely. We had a dry period in 2011. We had completely dried out, and because of the wildlife inside the water in the cave, we actually did some scientific experiments where we filtered a lot of water through limestone, and then we actually pumped that water into the cave to try and conserve those species, because in caves, obviously, they're so isolated from other animals that they tend to be actually endemic. They tend to have their own sets of species in them. So we didn't want to lose the stygo fauna. The cave is declining, the water level is declining at the moment, but it happens every year. We have a small decline. So hopefully with last year's above average rainfall, we'll see some more water. So thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the tour, I hope you enjoyed the cave, and I hope you all have a great holiday in Margaret River.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Martin.
Can you go first on the way back? Yeah. No, that's fine. Whoever the same photos, it's better.
Probably the nice photos.
Yeah, I think I'll have to do it. It's got the... That's really fascinating, isn't it?
See all the drops of water on the end of the straws. Really busy part of the cave.
Compared to the other caves in the area, is this one of the better ones?
They're also different,
Are they?
so it's really hard to say which is better or worse.
Yeah.
They're all very, very different. So this cave is called Pretty Cave, with the water that's constantly at the bottom of it. Jewel Cave is incredibly heavily decorated, and it's very big.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's huge. It's the largest show cave in Western Australia.
Oh, okay, so that's
Yeah.
Jewel Cave.
Yeah, and that cave has a really rich fossil history. So they've found lots of
You're right. No hurry, we're all going to the same place.
So they're all different. Yeah, no, it's not that. Thank you, that's just it's someone to to see this.
Sediment.
Yeah,
That's what it looks like, sand ripples.
See, there's one's broken.
Yeah.
I guess that's
Yeah. Beautiful, isn't it? Yeah, I'm still looking at it. Can you see just over there on the side of some of all the drops, the really they catch all the colour? It's, Even if it was New Zealand, I'd say we did that because they got massive coast.
Yeah, I think it was because we were in this little boat and I know we had Ellie with us, so. I don't think really many caves in this one.
See, this isn't Sydney. It's there.
Yeah.
So maybe it's the little engine room. Up there.
Yeah.
Something like that. An emergency zone. Yeah. So we've got 300 steps to climb. Did that castle rock thing the other day.
Thank you, that was wonderful. Thank you very much.